The Wolverines and the Buckeyes assert their dominance this weekend. Can anybody other than Penn State hang with these guys in the conference or the country? I don't think so. Locked On Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. We always appreciate each and every one of you. Of course, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's podcast, we're talking about the Wolverines. You know what? As good as they are, they're getting better each and every week, and that should be scary for the rest of college football. Also, the Buckeyes survive a scare, but then they look awesome all of a sudden. They can bottle that up. They'll be great. Got the best of the rest, and also our Big Ten Top 10, my Top 10 observations from the weekend. I'll share them with you. Stick around for all of that. Be sure to subscribe. Hit that black button right below, please. We're asking you to. It helps us out a lot. And follow Locked On Big Ten for free wherever you get your podcast. That way, you'll get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it becomes available each and every day. In addition to subscribing down below, you could also hit that little bell there, and then you'll get alerts whenever we are out and about. All right. So this weekend, Michigan and Ohio State, of course, Penn State had a bye, but I think they're up there in the same breath. I don't think anybody can hang with these teams. I don't know, the Big Ten or maybe even elsewhere. I don't know about Georgia yet because they really haven't played anybody. But I know some of you are saying, well, who's Michigan play? Listen, I'm telling you, I think all those teams at the top can be had by Big Ten teams. So we'll get to all that. I'm going to share with you some observations I had on Michigan in the Minnesota game. They beat the Golden Gophers 52-10. You might look at the score if you didn't see the game, say, wow, all right, whatever, blowout as expected, right? I do have some observations about PJ Fleck's Gophers. Look, they played as hard as they could. They were ready as best they could be, given the talent and the depth difference between those two teams. Heck, they scored 10 points on the Wolverines. Do you know how many people have scored 10 points on the Wolverines this year? Nobody. That's the most points they've given up all season long, 10 points. So kudos to PJ Fleck in Minnesota for that. I will say this. Michigan fan, calm down for a minute because we're going to praise the Wolverines a lot. Nobody's perfect. There were a couple of times in this football game I watched Saturday night, a few 3rd and shorts and 4th and shorts where I thought the Minnesota offensive line got the better of the Michigan defensive line. You agree or disagree? I mean, they're not won the whole game. Wasn't the aggregate battle, the overall running theme. But, when they needed a yard, they largely got it. And I thought the Minnesota offensive line did a pretty good job in those situations. Again, it didn't happen all night, but it happened enough to get my attention because nobody's done that at all to Michigan all season long. And look, take your hat off. Minnesota has a good running game. They have. They've had multiple freshman running backs win freshman of the week in the Big Ten this year. Okay. They had Darius Taylor, freshman out of Michigan, won it 3 straight weeks, 3 in a row. Then he got hurt. He hasn't played in 2 weeks. And Zach Evans steps in and he won it last week. If you can substitute one freshman running back with another, and they're both winning freshman of the week in the Big Ten, then you got to go back and look at the offensive line and say, yeah, they're pretty good. They're pretty good. So tip your cap to them. That's a good offensive line. And you know what? That's something that Minnesota and PJ Fleck's coaching staff, they can hang their hat on for the rest of the season and build upon that as they build around Ethan Kaliakmanis, a young and sometimes struggling quarterback that they can help prop up and make some progress there. So anyway, we mentioned that. Now, on to the Michigan Wolverines. And by the way, those few plays that I said that Minnesota won on the line of scrimmage, those are plays that Michigan could go back in the film room and coach them up. Look, coaches are always looking for something to get better. And Michigan is at the point where it just needs to fine tune a few things here and there. Look, they're not a perfect team, but they're close. They're close. They can play any style of football, running game, passing game, special teams, defense, whatever they need at that particular moment against any opponent, they can deliver it. They can. I mean, they just stay healthy the rest of the way. They can deliver it. But you're always looking to fine-tune things and make things. I mean, they are a great team. I say they're not a perfect team. They don't get penalties. They don't turn the ball over. They don't beat themselves, and they're good on their own. So anyway, things to work on if you want to be really nitpicky and split hairs. Meanwhile, the Michigan defense continues to impress overall. They had a couple of pick sixes in the game. Will Johnson ran back a pick six in that football game. It was in fact, it was the Gophers' second snap from scrimmage to start the game. That's not going to deflate you in front of your home crowd, Minnesota. I don't know what will. It didn't at the time. They fought right back. But I thought it was cool. If you're watching on YouTube, I've got a picture of it here. The team posed together on the sideline after the pick six. And Jim Harbaugh gets in on it as well with the headphones on, and then goes back to coaching. I thought that was a pretty cool moment if you watch that game on Saturday night. And here's a look at the little brown jug that they won. So it was a big night for the Michigan Wolverines. Checked a lot of boxes against an opponent that they pretty much knew they were going to beat. They were very businesslike. And I think the Wolverines, I heard on the broadcast on NBC on Saturday night that they dressed and brought 74 kids to this game. I think 73 of them played. I think the backup long snapper didn't get on the field, and that was about it. So they got a lot done that they wanted to get done in game action. Keon Saab also had a 28-yard pick six in the third quarter. By the way, that is the first game since 2017 that the Wolverines had two pick sixes in one game. So, again, another record-setting night, if you will. Did that for the first time since 2017. Offensively, J.J. McCarthy had another game where he did not have to be Superman. Look, anybody that thinks that J.J. McCarthy is going to win the Heisman, probably not going to be the case. Statistically, he's kind of out of that race, even though he just wins because I can hear you Michigan fans. Well, he only plays three quarters. Yeah, he only plays three quarters because they always have big leads. And they don't need him to throw a lot of stats up there. They're so complete and so balanced. But statistically, probably will hurt his Heisman chances, even if he goes undefeated and wins a natty, who knows? But the Heisman will be decided before the college playoffs anyway. So anyway, just throwing it out there. It's not a criticism. It's just an observation. He completed 14 of 20 passes in this game for 219 yards. Also had a career high 2 rushing touchdowns. So he's got a running game going in with this as well. Meanwhile, as PJ Fleck put it, the Wolverines, they're like a boa constrictor. They just constrict on you from every direction. The Gophers quarterback, Kyle McCord, he completed just 5 passes all night. That's it. 5. That's all the Wolverine defense gave up. 5 passes, 52 yards, and 32 of those 52 yards came on that touchdown pass to Daniel Jackson right before the half, where they kind of just threaded the needle to a place where nobody could defend it. It was a beautiful pass, actually. But that was 32 of the 52 yards all night. That's it. That's all the Wolverines defense gave up passing-wise in this game. All-world Wolverines running back Blake Corum, again, kind of like J.J. McCarthy, didn't have to do a lot. Got 69 yards on the ground. That was with a season-low 9 carries on the day. Don't need them. Just everything was under control. Spread the wealth. Get Edwards in there. Get him a few carries. And that's what they did. Overall, though, even though it's kind of amazing, J.J. McCarthy doesn't light it up because he plays 3 quarters and doesn't have to throw. Blake Corum doesn't light it up because he only runs the ball 9 times in the game. And yet they got 432 yards of offense in the game. I'm just shaking my head. It's unbelievable. That's compared to 169, 432 to 169 for Minnesota. The Wolverines also set a program record, 9 straight games scoring over 30 points. This team's on a roll. This team is on an absolute roll. They're now 6-0. They're 3-0 in the Big Ten, and they got Indiana visiting Ann Arbor next week, and they just made a change at offensive coordinator, and Indiana's having some problems here. So, I mean, likely Wolverines are looking at 7-0 here and 4-0 in the Big Ten. So in the meantime, they get to keep the Little Brown Jug trophy for the 43rd time in the last 47 matchups. Little Brown Jug pretty much lives in Ann Arbor. And the Wolverines have won 17 conference games in a row. The accolades just keep piling on here. It's the second longest stretch in team history. We mentioned So Michigan 17 conference games in a row. That excludes last year's Big Ten championship game. So they only trail the 19-game winning streak from 1990 to 1992. By the way, the Ohio State Buckeyes, they have the 3 longest conference winning streaks in history. That includes a 30-game winning streak in the conference from 2012 to 2015. And for those of you who are wondering out of curiosity, because it's been a while, the last time the Wolverines lost in a conference game was October 30th, 2021 against the Michigan State Spartans. There was some thought early in the day because Michigan played early. They played late. There was some talk earlier in the day, I should say, that, hey, maybe if Michigan rolls, can they even move up to number 1 in the rankings? No, Georgia blew out Kentucky, so there wasn't any hope of that. But number 3, Texas, of course, lost in the shootout to Oklahoma. They were in the number 3 spot. So this, if nothing else, it ensconces Michigan in that number 2 ranking, both in front of them, behind them. So speaking of Michigan State earlier, the Mel Tucker Title IX hearing is going on, during this whole bye week for Michigan State. And there was some news that broke over the weekend. His accuser, Brenda Tracy, has been granted an emergency restraining order, temporarily banning Tucker and his attorney from releasing more of her private text messages. So win for her, not for Mel Tucker. Just kind of throw that out there. Again, we always keep an eye on that here on this particular podcast because I know you're interested in it as well. Meanwhile, let's back to the original topic here. Let's not get too carried away. While Michigan asserted itself and its dominance in the Big Ten, and with Penn State enjoying the bye week, we were wondering going into the weekend, would Ohio State have any problems with Maryland? And they did have problems with Maryland until they didn't, if you saw the game. Maryland went into this game against Ohio State with a 5-0 record. And thoughts being mentioned in the same breath as the Big 3 and the Big 10 was kind of exciting for Maryland. They wanted to see if they belonged. And you know what? For about 3 quarters, they were the best football team on that field. They were. They absolutely were. Taulia started making some mistakes, and it cost them big. Ohio State took advantage of it. And then the late third quarter, fourth quarter happened, and something just clicked with Ohio State, and they just blew their doors off. So I want to talk to you about that as well in a minute. Your comments are welcome on Twitter at Talk Big Ten, number 10, and also here on YouTube as well. So we're going to talk about the Buckeyes' really, really strong quarter. It should put other people on alert. We'll talk about that in 1 minute on Locked On Big Ten. Athletic Brewing Company. They've completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good, full flavor, well-crafted, just like full-strength beer. Their brews are great tasting, they're award-winning, and they beat out full-strength beers in global competitions all the time. They brew over 50 styles of craft non-alcoholic beer, IPAs, Goldens, sours. They experiment with new flavors and styles all the time. They sent me a bunch. I've been drinking them. They're awesome. They're fit for all times. You can drink them anytime. Again, no alcohol. That means you can go to your kids' game and drink. You work on the yard and drink them. Work out and drink them. No alcohol. You won't get a hangover ever. So you can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you or buy online at athleticbrewing.com. In fact, first-time customers, you can use the code Locked On and get 15% off your first online order. That's Locked On, LOCKEDON at checkout. 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. So the big question of the day going into Saturday was whether Maryland at 5-0 could hang with the Big 3, and in this case, hang with Ohio State, because they're one of the Big 3, obviously, and the game was at Ohio State Saturday afternoon. And for the first 3 quarters, you could argue, and I just did, thought Maryland was the better team on the football field. In fact, the Buckeyes, I don't know if it's coming off the bye or what, but the Buckeyes punted on the first 4 drives of the game. The Terps took a 10-0 lead. The Buckeyes only had 16 yards rushing in the first half. And even the offensive line, they couldn't reach out and block the linebackers and get the running game going. It was a one-dimensional offense in the first half. Even Urban Meyer's sitting there, you can just see him on the sideline, just like thinking, man, am I coaching? Am I not coaching? And he even said at halftime, he said, look, I know Ohio State has 3 new offensive linemen, but we're game 5 here, people. Let's get it together. He was right. And they kind of did in the second half. And then Taulia Tagovailoa, he started making a series of critical mistakes at the end of the first half and into the second half. First of all, he throws that pick 6. That gets Ohio State on the board. It's 10-7 at that point before the end of the half. And that wasn't the only problem at the end of the half. The end of the half was the problem. Remember? Maryland had the ball. They were inside the red zone. Taulia completes a pass over the middle. No timeouts left. And Ohio State did what their coach did, kind of sat on the guy for half a second before he could get up. Couldn't get to the line of scrimmage. Couldn't get up another play. Cost him 3 points. It was a bad mistake. It was a bad mistake at that point. Clock management. So a missed chance for Maryland, and more momentum shifting back to Ohio State in the locker room. But then, Maryland's not out of it yet. You fast forward midway through the third quarter, about 6 minutes ago. We're still tied at 17 in this thing. And Taulia throws the second interception of a game. It's returned to the 38-yard line. But hey, the Maryland defense, pretty good. In fact, there was a nifty move by Mike Locksley at that point. He caused Ohio State to burn a timeout in the red zone. Brilliant last-second substitution, 2 seconds on the play clock because he delayed it as long as he could. Ohio State had to burn a timeout. And then on top of that, the Maryland defense at that point doesn't break. They hold Ohio State to a field goal. Now, that was Ohio State's first lead of the game. 6:08 to go, or 6 minutes to go. They get the field goal. It's 20-7. But good job by Maryland. They're still in it. Nothing to fear at this point, except there was. This is where Kyle McCord took over the game. He grew up a little bit in front of us on the day, threw for 320 yards and 2 touchdown passes. Now, it wasn't flawless at this point. Kyle McCord at this point probably threw the prettiest pass of his career to Marvin Johnson on the right side on the out route over there. Unfortunately, somebody on the Buckeye sideline was penalized, bumping into an official sideline infraction. Might have been Ryan Day, might not have been. I don't think we ever got a good look on the replay as to who it was, but it negated a beautiful. This is what Kyle McCord can be. If you can do this, every time more consistently. So they penalized that. Then there's a delay of game. By the way, that would have been a 37-yard gain, but they get the 15-yard penalty, so that backs him up. Then they got a delay of game, but they bounce right back because they're heating up. Kyle McCord hits Cade Stover for 44 yards on a touchdown. That was early in the fourth quarter. Now it's 27-17. Now it's a 10-point lead. You can feel the momentum has shifted. You can feel Ohio State's going to win this ball game. You can feel Maryland, who was feeling pretty good about itself, just sink at this point of the game. And then they questioned on the broadcast. There's 8.5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and Mike Locksley ends up going for it on fourth down, 4th and 3, I think it was, and Maryland ends up stuffing it. Ohio State's defensive line stuffs the play. It was a beautiful play at the 17-yard line. So then Ohio State goes back to work, and Kyle McCord, he finds Marvin Harrison for what was apparently a touchdown, but they called Xavier Johnson with a very questionable motion penalty. So that negates that, but it doesn't matter because, again, Ohio State's hot now, and they just did the same thing. McCord to Harrison again. Touchdown on the next play anyway. 7 minutes ago. Now it's 34-17. Now this thing's over. They did add a late field goal with 2:20 to go. That made it 27 unanswered points for the Ohio State Buckeyes against what I thought was a pretty decent Maryland football. I still think it's a decent Maryland football team. But if the Buckeye fan agree with me or not, but if you could just bottle up what you were doing there in the fourth quarter, think you could be as good as anybody in the Big Ten or the country at that point. If you can have that consistently. Ryan Day was talking in the post game. You could tell he was fed up with the first half, but pretty pleased with the second half. So there was a lot there to build on for Ohio State. A lot of things to feel good about. So anyway, love your comments. Hit me up on Twitter at Talk Big Ten or here on YouTube, and I'll get to all those. I always appreciate them. Elsewhere around the Big Ten, Wisconsin coming off a bye. They beat Rutgers 24-13. Ricardo Hallman, a 95-yard pick six with 4 seconds to go in the first half. Spectacular. Absolutely spectacular. Braylon Allen rushes for 101 yards and a score in this game. And the Badger defense held Rutgers to 64 yards rushing. I think that was like 1/3 what they normally do. And the Badgers improved the record to 4-1. So good job there. Northwestern, 23-20 win over Howard. Backup quarterback Brendan Sullivan made his first career start for the Wildcats. He scored 3 touchdowns. Howard actually scored 13 points in the fourth quarter to make everybody really nervous. But Northwestern holds on to win. The Wildcats, ladies and gentlemen, after all they went through and the hazing scandal and the firing, they're 3-3. Good job. And triple their win total from last year. Good job, Wildcats. Elsewhere at Kinnick Stadium, Iowa wins 20-14 over Purdue. Caleb Johnson, Iowa gets him back from an ankle injury. He rushes for 134 yards and a touchdown, like he doesn't even miss a beat. He loves running against Purdue. Ran for over 200 yards against them last year as a freshman. So anytime he sees Purdue, it's game on. Cooper DeJean had another interception. That's his thing. And Deacon Hill, of course, at quarterback for Iowa, because we know that Cade McNamara was lost for the season last week with a knee injury. And the Hawkeyes are 5-1 with the nation's 130th ranked offense. I know I'm not telling Hawkeye fan anything new. I know there's a lot of you Hawkeye fans that are so upset with offensive coordinator Brian Ferentz. But what did Herm Edwards used to say? You play to win the game. That's what he said. Iowa Hawkeyes are 5-1. That's quite a mental trip, right? And you're like, oh, I hate this offense. We got to stop it. Well, people fired all like a 5-1. 5-1. That's pretty good, Hawkeyes. Nebraska on Friday night got Matt Rule his first conference win, his Big Ten win. Won on the road at Illinois Friday night, 20-7. Heinrich Harburg threw for 154 yards, and he ran for a team high 82 yards and got a touchdown. That's what they do. Quarterback usually leads in rushing as well. And the Nebraska defense, though, that's the story of the game. And nobody talks about it because it was Friday, and it was the first drive of the game for Illinois. Illinois gets inside the 1 on their opening drive, literally 6 inches away, and they can't get it in. 2 cracks at it. Nebraska's defense, good job. Brett Bielema was beside himself. So I can't ever remember a time in my career where I needed 6 inches. We had 2 cracks at it. We couldn't get it, but they did. It was a phenomenal job. Also, again, it's been a long weekend. Illinois had a number of Dick Butkus tributes on Friday night during the game. Of course, he's former Fighting Illini and former Chicago Bear. Passed away Thursday at the age of 80. Coming up in a minute, 1 minute, I'm going to rank the Big Ten top 10. I do this every Monday. Top 10 observations by me. See if your favorite player, your favorite team made the list. I'm going to do that in 1 minute, but I want to thank all of you for making Lockdown Big Ten your first listen every day, especially you everydayers that are out there. You make this thing go. Still trying to grow it. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. There's a black button down below. Always ask you to subscribe because that really helps us a lot if you can do that. And then if you want, click the little bell icon as well, and you'll get alerts every time we're available. But at the very least, subscribe if you will. And tell your friends and your family about us. Word of mouth. Make this thing grow and get more and more subscribers each and every day. That'll be fantastic. I would really appreciate it. Share, follow, and like Lockdown Big Ten. Also, another note on Fridays on this channel and all the Lockdown College channels, we have our Lockdown College Football Kickoff Live show from 11 a.m. Eastern to noon. A bunch of our guys pulling it together. We all contribute to it. I'm on there for a couple of minutes. We'll be on this channel. Just a programming note to keep an eye on out for that. Okay, so in 1 minute, my Big Ten top 10 from the weekend. See if you agree or disagree. It's next on Lockdown Big Ten. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED lights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts that you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. So here's what we do every Monday. Our Big Ten Top 10 observations by me while I'm sitting on the couch watching everything, going back, watching the highlights. See what you think as well. Okay. I'm going to put it up on the screen. I'm going to feather through these here. And here's the 10th one. The Northwestern football team. Brandon Sullivan. I want to throw this kid a bone here. Backup quarterback comes in due to injury, and he scores 3 touchdowns in the game. And Northwestern gets the win. At number 9, let's put in the Rutgers. Wesley Bailey. He had 2 sacks and 2 tackles for loss. I know they lost the game to Wisconsin, but I thought it was a performance worthy of a mention. Also at number 8, Nebraska. Quentin Newsom got an interception versus Illinois in that game. At number 7, the Wisconsin running back Braylon Allen. 101 yards rushing and a touchdown in the game. Very nice job by him. It's a great runner. At number 6, I'm going to put in Marvin Harrison Jr. from Ohio State. 8 catches and 163 yards and a touchdown in that game against Maryland over the weekend. And at number 5, we'll put his quarterback, Kyle McCord, who got on the ball. 320 yards, 2 touchdowns. Obviously, one of those to Marvin Harrison. I want to mention at number 4, Iowa, Caleb Johnson, running back from injury. Looked like nothing ever happened. 134 yards and a touchdown versus Purdue in the win. And again, I mentioned last time he played against him, he got 200 yards against Purdue. So he is racking it up big time. At number 3, I'm going to throw in the Iowa defense in that game. First of all, because I couldn't put all these people individually. Cooper DeJean got another interception. That's 2 weeks in a row. And also, Logan Lee, 10 tackles versus Purdue, 2 sacks, 2.5 tackles for loss. And I got to mention Joe Evans, who had a sack and 4 tackles for loss in that game. So a lot of love for the Iowa defense. Again, they're 5-1, you guys. 5-1. Let's see here. Also at number 2, the Wisconsin pick 6, Ricardo Hallman, the 95-yard pick 6 with 4 seconds to go in the half. Put that at number 2. And at number 1, I'm going to put the Michigan defense. You got 2 pick 6s in the ball game. That's pretty impressive. Something hadn't been done in 6 years. And the Michigan defense just rocking and rolling. Although they did give up 10 points for the first time all season. First time anybody cracked double figures on them. But they are still spectacular and awesome. And I wanted to share that with you. And that's our Big Ten Top 10. You can comment on Twitter at Talk Big Ten or on YouTube if you agree or disagree. Or maybe I left something out that we need to give a mention to. So I wanted to throw that in there for you and check it out. In the meantime, there are many ways for you to be involved in this podcast as well. And they are on Twitter right here at Talk Big Ten, number 10. Our website, as you see the scroll on the bottom, talkbig10.com with the number 10, talkbig10.com. And also here on YouTube with your comments. Be sure to subscribe. Again, that black button on the bottom, it really helps us out. You can just click it. There's no other obligation other than that. It's free. Subscribe and follow this podcast right now on your favorite podcast app, and you get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Also want to invite you to check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast for the latest on everything going on in sports, and tell you to have a great day. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. I always enjoy it immensely, and I can't wait till our next visit. We'll see you then. I'm Craig Sheeman for Locked On Big Ten.